Hey, everybody. Welcome back. As you all know by now, I am Jennifer Bulbrook with I Am Somebody, and my co host, Isabel Bradburn Jackson with Dear Divine Goddess. And we're putting together this docu-series called Lost Souls Initiative, where we're taking people's stories and sharing them with the world, letting people know they're not alone and that their voices are meant to be heard. And today we welcome Miss Lacee. Welcome,
Thanks.
Lacee.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you just start off with telling the viewers a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your story?
Okay. So my name is Lacey. I actually am a child and youth worker. I work for foster homes and in the foster care system. So along with my personal story with addiction, I work with children and youth that struggle with the same story every day. Um, I was I'm a child of an addict who has been struggling with her addiction for the last 30 years. So since I was 4 years old, um, it hasn't been an easy run, but I'm just here to tell my story and explain what it's like having family members and going through the addiction portion with them, because it does affect families as much as it affects the addicts themselves.
Oh,
So
what?
my, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to ask you, can you talk a little bit about maybe what addiction looks like for, I guess, your story? Because everybody's side of addiction kind of looks different. And so it'd
Yeah.
be,
So prior to getting my education and knowing it book-wise, I lived it for many years with my mom. Um, with addictions, there's some great days and there's really bad days. And as a child with a parent going through that, you ride the wave with them all the time. My story consists of a lot of childhood neglect and traumas. I've lived through everything: homelessness, I've lived in shelters, I've gone through the rehabs, the in and outs with my moms, the meetings and the not going to the meetings, and the periods where she wanted to get clean and stayed clean for 3 months and then relapsed. I literally have lived it all with my mom. Um, it hasn't been easy, as I am now 34 years old and I am myself in therapy and trying to heal myself. So that's why I wanted to get on here and speak about my story. My mom started out doing drugs from partying with friends. I come from a very tight knit neighborhood. As Iz knows, we come from the same neighborhood and we are community and we're quiet and we all deal with our problems as a community. So when I was a kid, I didn't realize what was happening with my mom. I just figured it was partying. That's what we did. Our neighbors got together, the kids got together, and our parents would just party. However, when I was about 9 years old, I noticed a pattern in my mom. She would come home and she would always go in the bathroom for hours and hours. And then I was like, what, something's not right here. And just being the inquisitive child that I've always been and very observant, I started to realize like it was after she was in the bathroom, then she was like non-existent. Her body was there, but she wasn't a parent. She wasn't caring to parent us or to nurture me and my sister. So then I started to realize something's wrong with mom. So one day I noticed that there was like drugs in the closet. And I actually had to be the one to talk to my sister, not my older sister, but my sister that's in the middle of us, and just say, I think something's wrong with mom. And from there, it was just like a downward spiral. My mom did try at a young age with me. She put us in dance classes and she tried to do all of the things that a normal parent should do. However, when I was about 9 or 10, her addiction took a turn for the worse. And that's when I started noticing the rent wasn't being paid and she wasn't coming home for weeks or for days. And my older sister had to constantly step in to be that parent role for me. As unfortunate as it is with my mom, I'm one of the blessed ones to say that I do have an older sister that is my mother. And she stepped in and still, as 34 years old, lives 5 seconds away from me. And she poured all of her life and her what she didn't get as a child into me being the person that I am today. I am here because of her.
She really did, Lace, because when you were just saying that about like when you were 9, you realized the problem. I remember you being a baby in diapers
Mhm.
and your mom was gone for days and
Yeah,
Shauna was mothering you guys. Like she took on that. It makes me sad every time I even think or talk about it because I watched your sister go through it, and like
yeah,
at those times we were close because we were the hood kids. We all lived like real close to each other, you know?
yep,
And I remember me and her and Sash hanging out in the backyard watching you and your middle sister in the pool and thinking like, this is not your job. You're a kid. Like you're not
yeah,
supposed to be doing this. And for
no,
like days, we would just go there and hang out with Shauna while she was watching you guys because mom was gone.
yeah.
And
And
like,
that,
you know, I love your mom. I
yes,
don't have a bad thing to say about her, but
no,
I saw what she did.
yeah.
And my thing is like Shauna was pretty good at keeping it under
It
wraps if you didn't notice it until you were 9.
100%. And even now, as an adult, again, my sister is my mom. She's my best friend. So we talk about it. And I'm in this field, so I'm more open to my story and I'm more open to the experiences where she's more just learning now that this is what I went through. And even the other day, she made a comment and said, you know what, like, I seen one of my friends and her mom like walks her kids to school and like I wish I had that. And I just teared up and I said, thank you, Shauna, because I didn't lack that because she did that for me.
Yeah.
Even though she was missing that portion of her life, she put her life on the back burner. I'm 7 years post secondary. I almost have my bachelor's degree, and I wouldn't be there if that wasn't for my older sister. So, amongst the addictions that my mom did go through and her sickness, I have to say I was blessed because I had an older sister that put her life on the back burner to make sure that I was successful and that I am somebody.
Oh yeah, she did.
Yeah.
But
So
you guys
just with
did that together as well.
yes.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you had to ride everything together. You know what I mean? You put in the
100%.
effort. Amber put in the effort. Shauna did what she could. Like
Yeah.
you guys did that shit together. Yeah, of course, under Shauna's guidance. And she did give up a lot. Even as a child, she gave up a
100%.
lot. But she
100%.
kept you guys out of the system. And I don't even know how she did it.
She did. She
Like
fought.
I've had conversations with my family members and said, I don't know how she did it.
She fought for me, Isabel. To be honest, what happened is the CAS did get involved and they wanted me. And she said, no, no, I don't care. You guys don't have to pay me. I don't want nothing from you guys. This is my sister and I will take her. And prior to them even stepping in, she already took me. She took me for weekends just to make sure that I was getting out of that environment, right? But soon as they did step in, she was like, nope, this is my sister and she's my responsibility. And like I said, even as a 34-year-old grown woman with 2 children of my own, she still will step up and say, no, not my sister. That's my sister, you know? So I
Yeah.
am blessed in that portion. But even with my mom now, and you never realize how much it affects you, even as an adult because there's days where I wake up and I say, you know what, I am not her addiction. And I have to set those boundaries. But then there's days that I cry because she's my mom, right?
And that
So,
inner child wants her mom.
so bad, right? And as much as we try to help and get her on the right foot, it's just all those feelings of like, you're not enough. And even though I've gone to school and I've done my research, I have to give it to my mom because as a child, I didn't understand. So as I got older, I was like, you know what? I have to understand why. I have to understand how. So that's why I did my schooling. I did child and youth worker. Then I went back and I did my mental health and addiction certificate. Right now I got my bachelor's of arts and I'm majoring in human services. So I tried to understand that portion, but still it wasn't healing myself because I could know all the knowledge book wise, but it wasn't. I was setting myself up for disappointment because I wanted to that answer, that end all be all, like this is why your mom's this way, but it just wasn't there, right?
You have to give yourself the love. You have to give that inner child the love that you are lacking from your mom, because
Right.
she can never be that person. She's sick, you
No.
know?
Yes.
And she will never be what you need her to be, but you need to be that for yourself
Yes.
in
100%.
order
And
to
for my
heal from
kids. And for my kids. And that's why
it.
addiction is hard. And a lot of people, I had a choice. And I had a choice to go the opposite way. I could have been a nobody and said, you know what? These are the circumstances I was handed, and I'm going to run with it. I'm not going to go to school. I'm not going to do any of that. I don't have to, because realistically, I didn't have that parental guidance.
Yeah.
However, I had Tyshawn at 16, and my whole life changed. He was my motivation. And everything that I didn't get as a child, I pour into my kids. However, as his teenage years have come, I've noticed that also some of my traumas I place onto him, and those aren't his to bear.
No.
So my parenting comes, oh, I don't want you to go outside. There's bad people outside. Or, like, what are you doing? Don't try weed and don't do all this. And I'm taking away from him being a normal teenager and experiencing the normal things because of the trauma and the childhood neglect that I went through, right?
Absolutely.
So,
I think
yeah.
too that's also just wanting to protect your child,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm,
Yeah.
I was the addict and a loved one of an addict, so I've had both sides of the coin,
Mhm.
and my kids suffered from my addiction. And my oldest specifically, I left my oldest and left him with my family, and I went and stayed with Isabel, and I was just out there.
Yeah.
And so I can feel your pain as both, because I've also been like, I as an addict can feel the pain that an addict that you suffer, because I can feel it as if you're my child, feeling, doing it and talking about it. And I can also feel it as like the addict is just, it's such the trauma comes through it, but I also just want you to acknowledge the strength that you have, and just always remember the strength that you have, and that you put that with you as you raise your own kids, and that how it shows is how you try to protect them by saying, I don't want you to go out there because it's not safe, and I don't want you to try drugs, and I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people who have been in your situation do go the other way.
100%.
So what made you go the way that you went? What do you think was your deciding factor that said, you know what, I'm not going to go down that path, I'm going to go down this one?
My son. I got pregnant very young. I was a teenage mom. Before it was 16 and pregnant was the big thing, the cool thing to do.
I remember your cute
Yes,
little pregnant
I got
belly.
pregnant and my whole life changed because I felt what it was like. Not that my mom didn't love me. I can't say she didn't, because I know it's an addiction and I know that she loves me. I just didn't want to put my son through having an absent parent. So from there, I was like, you know what? I'm doing what I have to do. I gotta go to high school. If I go farther than that, good for you, Lacee. But I have to change my life and the environment that I live in for my son. So after I had him, it was like I took off running. I graduated high school at 21. I ended up graduating with bursaries, and Tyshawn was already 3 years old at the time, but I did it. I went on to college and I finished it all. I've worked numerous places within my field. I love my job and I enjoy my job. And I find that that is also a big thing is I am able to heal myself through trying to heal others because I can relate. And I think in a lot of in this field, there is a lack for that, a lack for that personable stories. And you can be book smart, but unless you've actually experienced it, you can't relate. Right?
Yeah.
So that's where I find I have the upper hand in my field. I actually now have gone on to work in an elementary school that I went to for many years.
I
So
love it. I love that you say that because I remember I went and took the child and youth course as well and graduated from that. And I remember a friend of mine was going through it too. And she looked at me and she's like, "You're not going to do well. Like, look at all the trauma and shit you went through." And I went, "That's why I'm going to do well and going to do
100%.
better than you because I've lived it. You haven't lived it. You've lived this beautiful life that had two parents and the whole 9 yards to pick a fence, right? Like, so it was like, yeah. So I love that you said that.
It's so true though. There was one worker, I went to a parenting school when I was pregnant with my son. It was like a teen mom school. And it's odd. Her name was Lacee. And she looked me in my face and said, "How far do you think you're going to go?" And I said, "Farther than these four walls." And she went, "Let's see." And that was like, no, not me. I'm not going to be the statistic. I don't care if I came from a parent with an addiction or if I came from what people look at the North End like it was a bad place to live, which really I will be the first one to say it is not. Those streets raised me in the right way.
And they protected us.
100%. So from that, I was like, nope, I can't do this. And this is where I am. And this is where I want to be. I want to help people. I want to be a listening ear for those who are experiencing the same things that I experienced. Because if you don't know, you'll never know. Right? You can't sit down and be like, oh, well, you're strong. Get over it. If you don't know that struggle. Because like I said, still at 34 years old, I still go through it. I still cry and be like, you know what? Why me? Why did this happen? But one thing I've always had is gratitude. Because like I said, I don't think this was the path that I was supposed to walk, and I walked it anyways. So I have to be blessed and gracious for that.
Well, it became a purpose, and that's probably exactly what it is, because I notice a lot of people who have this type of purpose in healing and helping others, they go through this journey
100%.
that's really rough, you know, because they have to experience it in order to help others.
100%.
Like you were saying, like we go through what we go through, Lace, because it gives us the cheat sheet to help others.
For sure. And there's honestly I find there's no healing in silence. No. So that's why it's important for me to say my story and to enlighten others, because no, it's not easy, but it's what happens. It's common, right?
Yeah, and it is, because we're embarrassed and we're ashamed and we're afraid of what other people are going to think and say, because we've been hiding these deep, dark secrets for so many years, right? But all that does is perpetuate our suffering.
It does. It does. For a long time, I dealt with depression, anxiety, and I just put it aside. Oh, it's just because of what I went through. Until I got older and I started to have panic attacks. And then I was like, no, I need help. This isn't good. Then I realized, okay, this is anxiety. This is what happens. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I've gone through in the last 20 years that has obviously contributed to my anxiety. Yeah. However, again, I wake up every day and say I'm here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's a hard day. It's not a hard life, right?
It's hard to speak and tell your story, but it's harder to keep it in because it does turn into depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. And that's like some of the worst of the feelings.
Yeah. And you know what it is too, Jennifer? Is everybody, my whole life, everyone has spoken my story. I remember I was in high school and I think my mom walked across the street and somebody in the pizza shop was like, oh, look at Lacee's mom, a crackhead. And as a kid, I was so embarrassed and I hid. And I was like, oh my God, like this is what they think about me. But then as I got older, I had to realize it wasn't my choice.
Yeah.
It was her, right? Like I know it's not a choice, but it's her sickness. You know what I mean? Like I've done all I could do as a daughter. I still do it to every day. I can't make her want to change that portion of her life, right? I would love for
I'll
it to
tell you one
happen.
thing though, Lace. I don't care what anybody fucking says, and they can't say shit to me when it comes to her, because regardless of the amount of years your mom has been on and off drugs, she's always been a good fucking person. She's always
Yeah,
been a good human. She's
yeah,
always wrapped her arms around everybody and showed love. So
yeah,
I don't care what anybody wants to say about that woman. They can't say shit to her about shit to me about her,
yeah.
because I love that woman
If
because
she
of who she is.
Yeah, if she loves you, she loves you. She
Yeah,
will, like, she might not have everything, but she will go to a food bank and feed something that your daughter or your daughter's cousin might like, and she will get that thing. So she is an amazing person. I just think her addiction is her biggest barrier and her biggest struggle.
yeah,
And as her daughter, I want to have hope, but I'm not gonna lie and say it's hard after so many years
yeah.
because I'm on this merry-go-round with her, right? And it's like I put up these boundaries and say, you know what? I tell her all the time, it's my famous slogan, and she knows it. I will support you through your sobriety, but I cannot constantly support you through your addiction, mom.
Yeah.
And then I get on this merry-go-round with her, and then she goes down again, and then I try to pick her up. But right now, the biggest portion is what comes with her addiction. It's the fighting, it's the yelling, it's you know what I mean. It's the her blaming, the accountability
The
portion.
abuse.
Yes, and that's what's hard for me right now. So I have to put those boundaries up because if it's more detrimental to my mental health and my healing at this point, I have to take a step back.
Absolutely.
But it's a very
And the
hard
sad
thing to do.
reality is, Lace, your mom is not going to change or get clean until she
That's right.
finds the strength to deal with her own trauma.
I know.
Because the drug addiction is not the problem, it's the symptom of the problem. She's
100%.
trying to numb out, she's trying to forget everything that she has gone through in her life.
Yeah.
She's hiding, she's running. And
She may not
until
even
she
know that
comes
that's
to
what
terms
she's doing
with her,
either.
No.
you know?
Yeah.
You
Even
know.
I try to step in and I try to step out of the daughter role and step into the counselor role. It's never easy when it comes to family. But even like last month, I was able to get my mom around and she stayed with me for a couple of weeks. And every morning we would go out and have a tea and we'd have like a counseling session. And I would just try to enlighten her and talk to her and, you know, mom, what is it that you feel that you're lacking? What do you feel that you need? And we got into such a good conversation. And she's like, well, I feel like sometimes you tell people about what I do. And I tried to just be honest and say, listen, mom, I get that you've struggled, but this has now turned into my story. So you have to understand that because I am not Lacee without this now. It came hand in hand. But she understands it's a sickness. She understands that it's hard, but it's just getting over that hurdle of getting enough help to actually see it through, right? And also it's the lack of services too. The services are horrible. Most recently, I had my mom on Zoom meetings in like San Francisco because my mom was saying like when she goes to a meeting, it's the people, places, and things. It's where addicts meet addicts, she says. And I'm like, what do you mean? I never understood. And she's like, Lace, like they'll just go on a break and then people are doing drugs. So it's not good to be in that atmosphere. And I totally understand that. Or the rehab facilities that are non-existent. They have you on wait lists and wait lists and wait lists. They want you to send them to St. Catherine's and then they have to be clean. But then if they're not clean, they can't get in. It's like a setup for failure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So over the years, and like I said, I've been dealing with this for years with my mom, I've noticed that the resources aren't there. So how do we expect any different when there's no help?
Yeah.
When
Or they're sending
growing
them to
up, were
detox
there
and then they have to wait
resources
6
with
months to
you?
go to
Sorry.
rehab,
Sorry, Jennifer,
right?
what did you say?
When
I
they
was
send them to detox and then they have to wait 6 months to go to rehab. Well, by then they've already relapsed.
100%.
Yeah. When growing up, were there resources for you? Like it sounded like you had a good support system within like your sisters and like your community and that, but was there like any outside resources coming in and helping you? Were the schools helping you?
Honestly, no. I think I was one of those kids. Like I said, I had my sister, which was amazing, but I was definitely one of those kids that fell through the cracks because there were so many signs that I needed help and my mom needed help, but there was no one reaching out to help. I was just again blessed with certain individuals that came in my life. I went to Sir John A. We all go to Sir John A. It's a North End thing. And my principal was like the most amazing human being. My mom wouldn't come up, or my mom wouldn't come for like parent teacher interviews. My principal would sit in and say, like, Lacee's mom couldn't make it today, so I'm gonna listen to what's going on. But there really wasn't a lot of resources. I lived in a shelter with my mom. There at one point, my mom didn't come back to the shelter, and they had to remove us from the shelter because I couldn't eat. I couldn't go in the kitchen by myself. I was under 16 years old. But instead of like, not saying calling Child Protective Services is the answer, but instead of that, they just waited for my mom to come back and say, okay, you guys can't stay here because you keep leaving her here. So there wasn't a lot of help. There wasn't a lot of help at all.
It sounds like the people who were supposed to be there to help neglected you just as much as your mom did.
100%.
It was like neglect after neglect.
Yeah. And then once we left that shelter, we went to a North End shelter. And then that was just amazing to me because that was my community. So even though my mom wasn't in the shelter with me all the time, I was still in my community. She signed a pass saying that I could sleep out. And in the North End, I was raised there. I could walk down the street and have two people and they'll see me and I'm going to sleep over tonight. And they're like, okay, they.
Everybody would feed you. Everybody would house you. They clothe you. They
100%.
do whatever you need, for sure.
Yeah. I think when it comes to the schooling, I think my elementary school, they had signs of it, but there was also so many of us going through things that it was like they were out of resources themselves. And like I said, I work in the elementary school now and it's still the same thing, right? The North End is an amazing place, but it's where a lot of shit happens. Like we can be honest,
I
right?
think it's worse now than it ever was.
Yes. Yeah, it is definitely. See my face? Yes, it is. But I mean, that's what it was. I was just one of those kids that fell through the cracks. It seemed like I had it all together, so they were like, "Okay, well, she'll get it together. She could do it." I was always very resilient. At one point, my mom wasn't around, and I was going to the Salvation Army truck and bringing home lunch for me and my sister. Even that, I look back now as an adult, and I'm like, why didn't those workers be like, hey, this kid's like 11 years old and she's coming to get, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is she homeless? Like, what's happening? But it's like in the kerfuffle of everything, I just got bypassed and bypassed and bypassed.
Yeah.
You say things are worse now. How would you say they're worse?
I think because I'm now a parent. So I feel like with my mom, I have to word this properly. With my mom, we're all grown now. So I feel like she is worse in her addiction because she feels like she doesn't have anybody to take care of. Where when I was younger, she still tried. She still was trying to be that parent, whether it be throwing us into a dance class or along those lines. Where now she feels like we're all grown and she could just do whatever she wants. To be honest, now when I talk to her about things, she'll say like, I don't know why you're controlling me or why you're trying to control me, but I'm just trying to help.
Does she want
So
help?
honestly, Jennifer, I don't, I would say no. I would just say no because most recently, me and my sister have literally put it out there. You can stay with us. We'll put you in rehab. We will feed you. We'll house you. You can be here with your grandchildren. My mom has 6 grandchildren, and that isn't enough. So I would say no. She doesn't want to help, but I know it's hard, right? But then it gets to a point where it's like, what do you accredit to her addiction, and what do you accredit to bad parenting?
Yeah.
Right?
It's all a choice. It really is. And I know a lot of addicts out there will and families of addicts are gonna tell me it's not. Once you're an addict, like you lose your choice. No, it's a choice. I was an addict. I was an addict of alcohol. I was an addict of drugs. I was an addict of perks. I'm an addict of coke, crack, acid, you name it. I was doing it like daily. And it was a choice each and every time. It may not have felt like a choice at the time, but now that I've have a grasp of it and I can see things clearly, it was a fucking choice. I chose to leave my kid at my mom's. I
Yeah.
chose to go and stay with Isabel. I chose to go and do this and do that and do that. And the when
Chose
I'm
to numb out.
yeah, right. And at the time, I didn't know that's what I was doing. And a lot of times, that's where I think the loss of the addict goes. It's not so much that they don't have a choice; they just don't realize why they're doing what they're doing. They have no idea. They just think it's taking control of them now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I also think I feel like she feels like she has no alternative because it's all
Mhm.
she knows,
Yeah,
right? But another big thing is accountability.
yeah,
And I know my mom will never get clean because she cannot take the accountability. It's
Yeah.
never I did this or I screwed up. It's always an excuse. It's Lacey, you got pregnant at 16. To be honest, for some reason, I'm always the runt of it. But I'm just so used to it at this point. You did this to me. The most recently it was, oh, I had to go and leave because you're negative. Or just certain things like that. And I know that if you don't take accountability for your choices, how do you change? How do you
You're
sit
the
back and
you're the one that she deemed the problem because you're the one who calls her out on her shit.
that's
You're the
exactly
one
what it
who
is.
tries to get her to take accountability.
Yeah.
So you're the negative one. You're the problem because I know Shauna stays pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Amber.
Amber
Yeah.
deals with her
Yeah.
because I
But
just remember her as
Amber's
a
in
child,
Scarborough.
right?
Amber's in Scarborough, right? So she's not
Yeah,
in the thick of it all. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is, right?
So you're the
I'm a
scapegoat.
bully. I'm a bully to her, and um I never liked her, and it's always just never her taking accountability, but always
No.
putting the blame on me. At one point, she even said something to me along the lines like, "Oh, you should be thankful to me because your life wouldn't be your life if I didn't do what I did, like with my career and stuff." And I have to tell her like, "No, no, 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 mom. Like, I made the choice
Yeah.
ultimately. I made the choice to be the person I am and be the parent I am and inspire others with my story
In
because of
spite
me.
of what you went through.
Yes, in spite of all of that, right? I it's just so hard because it's like accountability and just as an adult now, and I look at my kids and I know I don't have an addiction, so I can't say for sure, but I couldn't ever imagine missing certain parts of their lives or birthdays and Christmases and you know what I mean? Like that is like a hard pill for me to swallow, but it could be because of how I was brought up,
Yeah.
and And also the effects on children, like even little things, like I won't take an Advil. I'll rather be in pain because I accredit it to my mom's addiction. My doctor wants me on anxiety meds. I'm like, oh, I'm scared. No, no, I can't. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, like my mom's an addict. And they're like, okay, like, but this is how you feel, Lacey. You know what I mean? But I'm so scared. I've
I
never
get it.
done
I'm like
drugs.
that too.
Yeah, I smoked a little weed when I was younger. It was the North End thing, but I've never done drugs. I steered away from that. You know what I mean? Because as soon as I think of it, I'm like, oh my God, this is what ruined my mom. This is what
Yeah.
ruined her life. Right. So I go through my life now as an adult, basically based on what the choices that my mom made. You know what I mean? And that's frustrating at times.
Yeah.
You know what
It
I'm
is
saying? Like,
frustrating at times. It sounds very frustrating. Like I know I'd be frustrated, and I think it happens with all of us. But it also could be a blessing too, in a way.
yeah,
And I'm not saying it's a blessing that that's how you grew up, but it's a blessing that you didn't go through that path because your mom did. Maybe if your
Mm-hmm.
mom didn't go through that and you had a better life, maybe you would have went down. And we don't know, right? But I'm just
yeah,
saying it's a blessing,
it
and
is.
I like to look at the blessings like you do, right? And
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
sorry, my dog's
yeah,
yelling and I'm coughing.
yeah.
Over the years, what would you say some of the or what would you like to see change within our system with it, like the addicts and the mental health?
There is a whole bunch. We need reform. The whole system is broken. And that's coming from the tents. And I know that they are needed, and homelessness is a very big thing, but we are basically setting them up for failure. I lived on Ferguson Street with all the tent city for almost 2 years. Okay. And
Yeah.
even as a worker, I couldn't pull myself back from running down there and administering Narcan and helping people who are overdosing. That was a very hard step for me because I was literally pulled between being a worker and being a mother because that was my place, my home, and my kids were subjected to it. So that's why I took the leap and moved on the mountain. However, I think that the whole system needs help. First off, there's not enough resources at all. There's not enough money allocated to these resources. The homelessness, the poverty, even the foster care system. It is so, there's no foster homes. And not a lot of people realize that. So therefore, we're getting all these kids that are experiencing parents with addictions and trauma and abuse, and we are having to close the door on them, or we are having to send them far to Ottawa or wherever because we don't have any houses. We don't have the resources here anymore. I think that the city needs to take it as a serious concern. The mental health portion, we don't have the help.
Mm-hmm.
Even personally, I went years and years and years saying I need help. Something's wrong with me, my thoughts, my brain. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, you were having a bad day. Or this is what happens because, your mom's this. But until like I actually had like, I like to call it a breakthrough. In the beginning, I was calling it a breakdown, but I'm calling it a breakthrough now. That's when they took me serious. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I need help. And if I'm saying that, then it's supposed to go a long way. And then it's like, that's what made them jump and be like, okay, let's get her this help. However, the only reason I got the help that I needed is because I have benefits. Because prior to me having benefits, I didn't have that help.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole system needs to be reformed. We need a lot of help and a lot more than what they're giving us.
Absolutely.
Every day I drive down the street and I see these tents and that's not helping them. It's not helping their addictions. It's not helping their homelessness. It's just setting them up in spaces where the drugs are easily accessible. Have you guys gone down by Tweedsmuir or Victoria Park? It
Not
is
in a while.
horrible.
Somebody I was
It
just No, I know, was just stabbed in the heart 2 weeks
It,
ago.
it is not
Heart
a
in
good look.
Sherburne, 10 City.
Yep. And my heart goes out to them because they need help, but there's no help we can give when there's no resources. Right?
Yeah,
So they think that giving them the tents, that's the help they need because it's giving them somewhere to stay. But really, we're just setting them
keep
up
them
for
warm
failure.
and dry.
Yeah, we're just setting them up for failure.
It's
I
a
watched that
temporary fix.
100%.
Band-Aid,
And,
for sure.
and on top of it, it's temporary and it's just giving them reason to not want to search for an apartment, to utilize their money, that the little bit of money that they do have to use drugs, right? It's not helping them at all. It's helping them in the moment, but not in the long run.
Yeah.
We need more rehabs. We need more detox centers. We need more shelters. COVID showed it. There is nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And that's not normal. You know what I mean? Like we shouldn't be turning people away who are crying for help. Because then they want to talk about the overdose rate.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to say it, the blood's on their hands too. Right?
Yeah. That's the time, like, you know what? Open up your churches, open up your friggin' schools that you've shut down, open up the apartments that you shut down for like the stupid train or whatever the hell that's not even friggin' come in yet. Open all that stuff up for these people. Like the church is like supposed to be like all this, like, you know, why the hell are you not letting people stay there? Really?
Well,
Why? Because people need to go there and pray. They can pray somewhere else, you know, under the roof that they already have.
It's like that North End survey. I was born and raised in that survey, and it breaks my heart to drive by there every time because they pushed, and that's the worst part is they pushed people out of there. And I know because most of those people were my family, and they didn't want to leave, but they pushed people out for what? For it to sit there, and it's still just sitting there. And they went and took the windows and doors off so people couldn't live in there when we have tenants everywhere.
Yeah.
Throw them in there. Do you know that they did have the hydro going there? I've done a little bit of research on it. They rather pay for security to walk around that place and make sure nobody's squatting than pay for a food voucher and let somebody sleep in this empty, abandoned survey for a night.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. The government, it's like humans do have no place in the world to them. It really is. It's even with like this new dying thing, like we'll help you die if you want to, just apply, you know, like
program.
anybody can be on it. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, are you fucking serious? Like, take that money and help people live, help people thrive, help people survive, not 100%. Fucking kill them. That's just, it blows my fucking mind that this is how our life is right now. Can you imagine where it's going to be in 20 years from now? Like God, like I don't even believe in God.
No, but even with COVID, and then at that point, you could hear $2,000 for you, $2,000 for you, but now all of a sudden there's no more money to house these people. But when it was convenient for you guys could just give it all out so you could take it all back.
Yeah.
But now what, right? Like, it's just, there needs to be reform and there needs to be more resources. And I'm hoping I can get myself situated because I got a couple things in the works and I'm hoping I can be part of that reform myself.
Yeah, you and me both. And I know Isabel, all three of us. Yeah. I've got like I want to have some transition houses. Like I really do. And like I don't fuck the government. Like I will I want to get the money and I want to open them and I want to be like, this is how it's going to be done because this is how it needs to be done. And it's by listening to the people who are in the moment experiencing it, not even listening to like my experience because I'm not living it now in this day and age. I'm not living in a tent. I'm not in that situation. I need to hear from them, from you guys to tell me what the changes need to be made. And the government ain't listening. The government's just listening to people who, you know, are living in their fancy houses, driving their fancy cars, which makes no fucking sense to me.
100%, right? Even like as an EA, that's a whole nother discussion, but I know you said you were in the field as well, and it is not like the school system itself. We are watching us prepare these children to be these same people who are living in the tent. And I know that sounds bad, but we are not preventing anything at this point. We are just basically enabling it.
Yeah.
I went into my job as an EA to give back because I didn't have an EA, and I know that I was a struggle because EAs weren't really that common back when I was a kid. But now it's like I'm not even doing what I set out to do. I'm just, there's so much politics of the school board, and the help that I really want to give is not there. They hinder that because we're just coddling these kids at this point. Do you know what I mean? And again, I love my job, but what are we doing?
You're just
You know
throwing
what I mean?
band-aids on the situation.
They just want to squeeze by. Let's squeeze by, get them through
100%.
this stage so that the
Bare
next person
minimum.
can handle them. And then the next person can handle them. And the next person can handle them until
That's
they're an
the
adult and
problem.
can handle themselves.
Yeah. And then when they're an adult and they can't handle themselves, they're in the tents and they're in the jail.
Yeah. And they're
Right?
giving them, signing up for like it's just ridiculous. Like,
Yeah. Right. And like the tent people, I understand like you need a place to stay, but when you keep giving them the tents, what do you expect to happen? They're just friends, and you know what I mean? Their users are like, okay, well, we're gonna go stay there and we're gonna go stay there. I know a couple people who are staying in tents that have houses. But because it's so convenient to be in a tent and the drug use is going on, and they feel like they're untouchable. I could just go outside and do what I want, and you know what I mean? So why would I stop that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who do some people that end up homeless who isn't because of drugs, end up in drugs and doing them because they are there so accessible. Like they're everywhere if down in any, and so people have to realize that too, that some people that do manage to end up on the streets didn't just go on the streets because of drugs. Sometimes it's, drugs were the secondary.
They didn't even end up into addiction until they went on the streets.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? Because one perpetuates the next. And then in comes the mental health disorders because of the drugs and the homelessness and all of the other things. Like, so it's like one issue perpetuates the next, and it's just like a vicious cycle. And there's no solution in sight.
No, it's poverty.
Yeah. And I think we need to focus on like mental health as one thing. Like, what are we going to do to focus on this? Addictions on another, poverty on another, and really get down and like put them in like categories, and let's like start focusing and like working on them. Because right now, trying to work on all of them is not working. Like, obviously, that's like, so let's pick one and fucking focus on it, get that up to go, and then we go on the next. And there's enough people in this world that really you could have a group of people focusing on one thing over here, guys, and a group of people focusing over here, and we could all do it all at once if you guys just delegate properly.
100%.
Like,
it comes with the delegation of funds too, right?
Yeah.
They keep pouring all of these funds into specific places that are already up and running, but they're trying to run these beautiful place. We don't need that right now. We just need vessels. We need homes. That's it. We need to just put the people in the homes. I heard that the government was giving to Inwell homes, and I understand that, yes, they are a church based community or agency, but you gave them $8.7 million and they built one three-story high rise. You know what I mean? How many people are we really housing? It's unfortunate. You know what I mean? And if you don't do your research and you don't know, then you're like, oh yeah, the government's giving us housing, the government's giving us money for mental health, but it's not really there until you're in it and you see that it's not coming, right?
Exactly.
Even us as, again, sorry
They're
to go back to my work.
those things.
They propose the money, and the money they give, they barely they don't put it to where they really need to put it.
No, they do not. They say they are going to. They say they have an initiative for the next 5 years, but then people forget about it. And then when you look back, nothing happened, but it just
Exactly.
sounded good in the moment. So everyone's like, yeah, we're
To
going to
shut
vote
people
for
up.
him. Yeah, we're going to vote for him because, yeah, that sounds that good. Or Doug
Mhm.
Ford in $1 beer. Do you know what I mean? That sounded great. Like, but that's what they do, right? The funds
But
really
right
aren't
there,
there.
dollar beer, like right there, you're pushing fucking addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%,
Our
Mm-hmm.
government,
right?
right there.
Yep.
Like, what the
100%.
fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even me working in the field, like I don't do it for $1 because if I did it for $1, I wouldn't do it. However, we are like in the pandemic, it really showed that even though we are technically frontline and we are on the front lines, we ain't shit as workers. Do you know what I mean? And we weren't an essential worker and we didn't get that extra pay. And it was all about the nurses and the doctors. And I get it. And thank you to those people. But I am saving people on my own way. And the government doesn't realize that. I invested 7 years of school into trying to make a change, into trying to help kids. But I'm just thrown at the back burner. Yep, we'll find another
The
one.
nurses and doctors are so important until it
Yeah,
came to them getting the vaccinations, and then they
yeah,
were tossing on their ass.
yeah, yeah. Or look at, we just fought as EAs beside the nurses, and they weren't giving us, nope, it wasn't happening. 11.7% nope. But then the nurses fought it. And the nurses got the 11.7%. And here we are as EAs getting $1 raise. You know what I mean? And it's not always about the money. But as a parent, I have to live. I have to take care of my kids while trying to take care of others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like the allocation of money and funding is not there. It's only to their agenda. Do you know what I mean? And that's not working in our favor because we will forever have these homeless issues and this poverty, even low income housing. There's not enough. There's not enough. There's a wait list of 15 to 20 years. Who is that helping? You know what I
Right?
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Stop
Yeah.
building these fancy buildings and just build a fucking building where people can live. Like,
100%.
we don't need all these fucking high rise buildings with these high ceilings and glass chandelier. It's crazy. Like, stop building all these fancy buildings and build a normal fucking building so that you can house more people. How does
100%.
that sound? That
Well,
sounds
look
pretty
at the
good to
survey
me.
Lacey was talking about that's empty right now,
Yeah.
right? How many units are there, Lace? Like 130?
There's tons
Yeah.
there. It's ridiculous. Every
That's
time I drive by there, I think,
130
oh my God.
families.
And
130 families
yeah,
that could be having homes. Why did what? They didn't tear them down. They didn't do anything with the land. Like, what is going on now?
and not only that, but if you aren't from there, you will never understand that you didn't just take those homes away, you removed a community because it is not the same. I went down to my aunt's the other day, sat on that corner, and I'm looking and I'm like, what is happening? It's quiet. It's just, it doesn't give that same feel. And I don't know if
I,
it's because I was born in that service, so I have
I
like a whole
can't even
different,
go down there anymore. It's depressing. It's
it
like I
is.
don't feel like I belong anymore down there.
It's weird.
And that was my whole life, my whole existence. Like, not even just mine, generations, my mom's
Yeah.
generation, my grandma's generation, like
Yeah.
generations.
Yes. And now it's like that they took that away and it took the whole survey, the whole North End away. It's very odd, right? And for nothing. Yeah. My
It's the
sister had
ground.
talked to her,
What
my,
the?
my sister had talked to her about it all the time. I'm like, if they go back, will you go back? She says, hell yeah, I'm going back there. Because they don't understand that we were looked at like we're a bad community because of the poverty and addictions issues. Like obviously the North End, we had a lot of addictions issues, you know what I mean? But you don't realize that throughout that, we became a very, very tight-knit community.
The
And did for
relationship I
generations.
made in the North End still hold true today. Look at us.
I
Me and your
know.
sister. Haven't
I
seen
know.
her in like 20 years. But I
But it's
have
like, yeah, I
mad love for
remember.
her and I will always have her back. Every
100%.
person I've ever come into contact or grew up with in the North End, they are still family to me.
Yeah, same as me. Same as me, right? So
I think the
it's crazy.
What other
difference,
community do you get that?
yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why, the North End has such a bad rep type thing is because you guys were kind of like a community. You guys were kind of open about shit. Like you guys took care of your own, where, people up on the mountain and stuff were more or less like hiding in
We
their
didn't call the
houses and
police.
not
We
letting
used
people
our
know.
fist.
And it was a different feel. I lived on like Kinraid at one point. Like I lived in different areas of the city. Like I've lived everywhere. And there's
Mhm.
a different feel in everything. And it's because there's in one, like you say, in like North End, there's more of like an outside community feel, where up here it's more like the rich snobby shit. Like, you know what I mean? Everybody holds their problems in and we can't talk about them. And it's just, it's like, why is that? I wonder
The
why
North
that
End, we
is.
accepted everybody. We didn't care if you were a crackhead. We didn't care if you were a
100%.
jailbird. We didn't care. We accepted everybody for who they were.
But do you know what? I moved on to the mountain 2.5 years ago now. And my sister Shauna did as well. She swears she lives on an island. She says it.
Yeah.
I got to go back up there to the island. And someone said, I remember we were talking to someone and he's like, where does she live? Binbrook? And I'm like, the mountain. But because it's so different up here than where we were raised. And to be honest, I've had more issues up here with my child than I did in the North End.
I live on the West Mountain. My kid is like the only brown skinned kid in his class.
We
okay?
live on,
and I call it Stushville. They're terrified of me because I'm like the white girl with the half black kid and the pit bull.
We live
so
on
they
the
think
East
I'm like,
Mountain. Yeah, we live on the East Mountain, and my survey is a little bit of a different dynamic than Shauna's, but there's no kids. My youngest is 8, and I'm like, I want to tell him so bad, go outside and play like we would in the North. But there are 0 children. Mm-hmm. They don't do fireworks. They don't do nothing up here. It's quiet. Right? And I'm like, honestly, this is different for me. You know what I mean? I explained to my children about like I was a survey kid. And now we're in a survey and they're like, well, this is what you did, Mom? Like nothing happened. I'm like, no, not my survey. Not mine.
I think it depends where you are, because I've lived all over the mountain and there's been times where my surveys were quiet and then there are times where the kids were really out. But my kids are older now, but I live across the street from a park and I'm on the East Mountain. And there's times where that park is so fucking quiet. I'm like, where is everybody? But then there's times where it's like, holy shit, there they are, right? But it's like only a certain times where I remember being growing up and it was like, oh, it's like, I'm awake, I'm going out. I'll see you back when you're, hunting me to tell me to come back. Now the kids actually go home and they and they want to be on their tablets and their PS4s and all that shit too.
It's the phones and the social media. And like, I think I got Google. I think Google came out when I was like 10 or 11. So I still did, like, we in the North End, we used to meet at the heater at Bonetto's. We'll meet at the heater. And everybody would know that, or the welcome in. Do you know what I mean? We would ride our bikes, street lights, come on, gotta go. You know what I'm saying? Like, where this generation doesn't have that.
A couple weeks ago, I felt like a horrible parent. My son is in day camp, right? So they were going down to the pier, like down to the bay.
Yeah.
And he's like, I've never been there. And I'm like, what do you mean you've never been there? I took you down there all the time when you were a kid. Like, that's mom's second home, the bay. And he's like, oh, my kid has no memories of the bay, bro. Like, are you kidding me? And me and my mom are sitting in the car and singing, like, down by the bay where the watermelons grow. You know what I mean? Like, he's looking at us like, I don't know where the bay is. See, like, my kid is one of those kids.
Yeah. See, with Ty, because I was so young when I had him and Shauna did live in that survey, he swears he's from the North End. And I have to tell him, like, we lived on Ferguson. It was close enough, but you aren't the North End. But like his nickname is like North Side. And I'm like, Ty, like, We are born and raised on Ferguson Street. I am straight from the North End, born and raised up until
Yeah.
2.5 years ago. You know what I mean? So I think, yeah, it's crazy that they just tore those down and nobody can even stay in them because there were
And they're
people
doing
living
nothing
there.
with it. Like, what
Nothing
the
at all.
fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible. They want to build condos, and this is another thing, and it ties into the addiction as well. You go downtown, and there's condos everywhere. But do you realize where you're placing these condos? If you don't fix the issues that we have with homelessness and addiction
People are
rates,
not going to buy those condos.
no, right? So, like, I don't know why they're setting themselves up.
Listen,
They're gonna.
I have been a Hamiltonian my entire life. Born and raised in the North End, so there's nothing I haven't seen growing up. Okay,
Yeah.
I will not go downtown.
No,
and I'm from the hood, bro.
When I drive down there now, I'm like, I hate it down here. I hate it down there.
I will not. I refuse. I don't even care. If the restaurant's downtown, I ain't going.
Yeah, I'm the same way now. I'm the same way. I'm a mountain girl for sure. I'm like, I'm not going down there.
I just can't. I think more so because it really just like breaks my fucking heart to see all of that. And I feel really deeply when it comes to stuff like that because I'm all about nostalgia and like my childhood and all the memories and like remember walking uptown every day because we were so close, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of the memories I have. And then now to see it like that, it's just like, oh, I can't. Like, I can't.
And it's crazy to watch the evolution of like the addiction issues. And when we were kids, we would see it, right? And it was a thing, but it wasn't so out there. Like now you drive up Wellington Street and the people are coming to my car. Do you know what I mean? And the person I am, I feel so guilty, like, oh my God, I gotta give. You know what I mean? Because that's in my heart. But then when it's another one and another one and another one, you can't help them all. You know what I'm saying? But
it's like, where does it end?
Yeah, it's so out there now. There's so many people struggling and young people. Like I said, I work with these kids and young children on very, very hard drugs. And I'm like, wow, like, you know what I mean? It makes you think like, where did we go wrong? Where did the system go wrong? You know what I mean?
The system went wrong by dealing with things as just sugarcoat, let's just bypass. And that's what they've been doing for years. You know, like the elementary school, like, hey, this is where we got them from this time to this time. Let's get them through here. And then we're going to move them on. And then we're going to move them on. And that's what it is. And then they're like, hey, we're done with you. Go do whatever. Live on the street. They don't care.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
What rips my heart out is that when I drive by these tents or I drive by these places or, you know, there's somebody in the middle of the median begging for change and they're people I recognize from my childhood.
I know.
And people that had like an all right life.
Yeah.
Like that didn't struggle like we struggled. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Like what happened?
Yeah. Or I look back and I'm like, I've known so many people who have died from overdose. So many of people I was raised with and seen my mom with her addiction issues. And I never would have thought, you know what I mean? And there are still some people in my life that will reach out and be like, Lacee, I need some help. And I love being helpful, you know what I mean? But I just never would have thought that that's the path that they would have took, you know? So it's a crazy thing. Man.
We can probably talk about this for hours and hours. But let's I don't even know how you want to end it. It's like, how do you end something when it's so like, because there's no ending, right? Like we haven't even started yet.
No.
It's like, so it's like, how do you end it? But it's like on to the next kind of like, it's like, just I say to people, if you have ideas, voice them and our opinions and our will go and our ideas will bounce off one another, and eventually somebody with the money will hear it and we'll
And
be like,
one of
yeah,
them.
let's do this shit,
Yeah.
like you guys got the ideas, I got the money, right? Like
Yeah.
us girls had the ideas, somebody out there with the money, come
Yep.
meet us.
Yeah. Yep.
And let's make some
Donate
changes
our
and let's
money and
help
we
these
will get it done.
people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like let's seriously help these people. And like that's like really just thinking about going back to the basics. And when you go and
Yeah.
decide to build a building, don't build a fancy fucking building that you need to have $1 million to fucking buy right now when
No.
there's so many people struggling. Let's focus on those people so that we can actually better our society as a whole.
Or not
Just
Mhm.
even
helping the
that.
rich people is not helping our society as a whole.
Like all
I
these
know.
5-bedroom house and 4-bedroom houses that you have out there for 2,200, 2,600, 20 whatever hundred, like rent them out as rooming homes
Yeah.
where they pay $600 or $500 a room,
Well,
but they
I
share the kitchen
understand
and the
why the
bathroom.
rent is as high it is. Rent is high out there because our interest rates, as a mortgage owner, I'm telling you, my
Mhm.
interest rate has like tripled over in the last 2 years.
Skyrocketed.
It's fucking ridiculous. I'm
Mhm.
now working with a broker to figure out how I can save my house so that I can keep up with the fucking interest rates. It's outrageous. So I
Outrageous.
understand why the rent is being hired. And so
No, and I get it too, but then charge $600 to 5 individual people. You're
Mhm.
getting what you need for
right.
your mortgage, and they can fucking afford somewhere to live.
But not
Break
only
it
that,
down into a rooming house.
it's also I get the rent is raised, but also the cost of living has raised. So the
Yeah.
welfare
Yes.
checks need to be raised, the
Yes.
disability checks need to be raised. That's the problem.
All the
these
expenses are
raises
being raised, but
happening.
incomes aren't. That's what I said.
No,
Like even
right?
people that
So
are working, their income isn't raising with the
for-
amount of groceries and gas and rent and
Jennifer,
mortgage and
I
all
work
that jazz.
I work 2 jobs that the normal person would classify government jobs. I own a business. I Uber Eats on the side. Do you know what I mean? I'm out here spreading myself so thin to provide for my children. Imagine the people who are on welfare and get $500 a month. I personally, the stage in my life that I'm at, I could never survive.
Yeah.
I could not. I could because I have that mentality. I've done it before.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you have to, but yeah.
Yeah, like I could never do it now, right? So it's the cost of living is going up, but no, the wages aren't.
Yeah.
We're stuck. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate. And until they address that, we are going to be stuck with
Yeah.
the tents. That's why they're giving them out so willy nilly. Like here you go, here you
Mhm.
go. He needs one, she needs one. I need a tent myself. Mine broke, but I mean, I don't need to live in it, so I would never take from the people who do need it. Right?
And I think like even on like with just this conversation between us, like we have had some great ideas and ideas that would actually be helpful and is not going to break the fucking bank, right? Is probably going to put less dent in their bank than their own stupid habits that they do. And so like, and I'm not about the government, like their stupid habits. So I just think that somebody needs to really listen to what like the people who are firsthand experiencing things and stop listening to the people who are in their fancy houses because they don't know what is needed, you know.
This is all really great information for me though, because I have a meeting booked with the MPP of Hamilton Center at the end of August. And these are all things that she wants to hear, like um, mostly about my brother's death and the circumstances surrounding that. Like, how do we prevent this from happening again? You know what I mean? But it touches on all of these areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My brother had mental health issues that were exacerbated by the drugs that he was doing. You know what I mean? And if it wasn't for my mom, it enabling him in some ways, he would have been in Tent City.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's so many issues.
Yeah.
And like I said, like I have a whole lifetime of of experiences and trauma. If you guys ever want me back on here.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
probably will. We'll
I
probably be
said the
calling you
same
back
thing. I'm
like,
like, I could do
thanks,
about 20 different episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Now that I got the first one out of the way, I'm feeling comfortable. I'm feeling good.
Well,
For
on
sure.
that note, is there anything you'd like to share with the viewers before we say our goodbyes or see you
Um,
laters?
I think basically just understanding that addiction, parents with addictions, it's a family thing. It's not just the addict that goes through it. It is literally down to the grandchildren. It affects you, and
Yeah.
healing is very, very important, because if you don't heal yourself, then it will just be a lifelong traumatizing event, right? Being very resilient, and knowing that even though it was a part of your story, it's not your full story. You make your story and you have the choice.
You get to write your story.
100%.
Yeah.
So
And in closing, I just want to say, I don't know if she'll ever hear this. Probably not. Maybe never. But Sherry, if you're listening, we love you. We're doing this because we love you and we want you to take care of yourself. We want you to get better. Lacee, I love you and I'm so proud of you for doing this.
thank you.
I've watched you girls grow, you know,
Yeah,
and yeah, it's really warming for me to see because you've come from so far, you know,
thank you.
like you had every obstacle against you, bro, and you fucking succeeded. Like you did it. You did that. Like I know Shauna was there. Shauna
Yeah.
mothered you. Shauna supported you, and she
Mm-hmm.
deserves her props. But you did this, bro. Nobody else. You.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm not there yet. I'm getting there. But that's another thing, right? With trauma, and I feel like I have imposter syndrome all the time, because I feel like it's never enough, because I wasn't supposed to walk like this. I wasn't supposed to be this person. So I'm constantly pushing as to why I got all this education in my background.
That's the inner
But why
child in
not?
you,
But why
right?
not stop looking at it like I wasn't supposed to be this person? I wasn't supposed to walk this walk. But what if you were? What if you were supposed to be this person? You were supposed to walk this walk. You were supposed to have this fucking journey. Like you are where you are because this is where you were supposed to be.
100%. You're right, Jen. You are. So I gotta look
And
at
the
it that way.
imposter syndrome, tell that bitch to fuck off.
Yeah.
Because that is just the inner child crying because like why was I never enough, mom?
Yeah.
That's just
you know what I mean? And you have to love on that little girl because nobody else can do it for you. And once you start giving her what she needs, the imposter syndrome will go. Because Sherry can't do that for you.
No.
You know, maybe she'll never be in a position to do that for you, but you can do that for you.
100%.
Because you are enough, Lacee. You always were enough.
Thanks as well.
Sherry just, you know, no, but it's true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your mother's addiction isn't because of you. It's something that she is refusing to deal with in her childhood. And it just fucking bled all over you guys.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not because of you. It's because of her own shit. And I know your mom. I know the way your mom loves. And I know she loves the shit out of you three.
Yeah.
But it's everything else, right? She's hiding from the embarrassment, the shame. Like she knows in her heart of hearts what she's done, and she can't deal with it, so she gets high to cope.
100%. And just erase it. I do believe that, yeah. So.
Well, I just met you, Lacee, and you seem like one strong ass motherfucker. So just remember that. Just remember, no matter what, you are somebody and you are going to own your journey because this is, you know, the person you're supposed to be. You're supposed to go through this so that you can help to make the changes. And maybe that's why you had the journey you had.
Thank you so much. And honestly, Jennifer, you're inspiring. You're inspiring for doing this, and there's not enough of you, to be honest.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate everybody that's listening and watching. We love you all. And remember, if you have a story to share, reach out to me, reach out to Isabel. If you have an idea, an opinion, reach out to us, share it, because like I said, each opinion idea will bounce off, and then we'll have one great big idea, and you'll have a bunch of small great ideas like we do right here on this episode that you heard right now. So reach out to us if you need. Remember, say it with me, say it loudly. No matter what, you are somebody. Take care and see you next week, guys.